We all have those foods we think of as super healthy, right?
Hmm.
And oatmeal. Well, it's often right at the top, that warm ball. It just feels nutritious.
It really does. It has that wholesome image.
But what if there's more to the story? Maybe some, let's say, surprising things to think about with this breakfast staple.
That's exactly what we're diving into. We got some interesting material from a listener, and it really makes you question some common ideas about oatmeal's health benefits.
Yeah, it challenges that health food label a bit.
Definitely. So today, we're going to unpack the arguments in this text. It suggests oatmeal might not be the unqualified hero food it's often seen as.
Right. And just to be clear, our goal isn't to say oatmeal is bad, full stop. It's more about exploring the points raised in this specific source, looking at a maybe less rosy picture.
Exactly. Understanding the perspective presented.
Okay, so the first big thing this source talks about is phytic acid. What's the deal there?
Well, phytic acid is naturally in oats, and it has this interesting property. It tends to bind itself to certain essential minerals.
Bind to them. Meaning what?
Meaning it makes it harder for your body to actually absorb those minerals properly. It kind of locks them up.
Huh. So it grabs onto the good stuff. Like, which minerals are we talking about here?
The source specifically calls out calcium, iron, magnesium, and zinc. And these are all, really crucial for your immune system, energy.
Right. And the source mentioned zinc, didn't it? That many people might be low on zinc already.
Yeah, it highlights that. So if phytic acid is binding to these minerals,
That we're not getting the full whack, even if the food technically contains them. You eat this healthy breakfast, but it might actually hinder you absorbing other nutrients.
that's the argument presented, yes. The source uses phrases like wanting food that empowers me or nourishes me.
And this phytic acid effect seems, well, counterproductive to that goal, doesn't it?
It certainly raises that question about nutrient efficiency. Are we getting the most bang for our buck, nutritionally speaking? It makes you think a bit more critically.
Okay, so that's point one. Mineral absorption potentially being blocked. But then the source brings up something else pretty major. Glyphosate.
Yes. This was quite striking. The source cited a study. I think it looked at 45 oat brands in the U.S.
Yeah. And what did it find?
Get this. Only 2 out of those 45 brands were found to be completely free of glyphosate.
Wait, 2 out of 45? That's tiny.
It's a really small fraction.
And just to remind everyone, glyphosate.
No.
As an herbicide, right?
Yeah.
Like active ingredient in Roundup.
Exactly. And the source points out it's used super widely on cereals, corn, soybeans, especially, the big monoculture crops, some genetically modified ones.
And the concern is about the potential health risks linked to it.
That's the core issue raised, yes. The source even brings up the big lawsuits against Bayer Monsanto.
Right, mentioning the millionaire compensation awarded in some cases.
Yep.
That definitely adds weight to the concern.
It does, and it leads to that really blunt question in the source text.
Would it-
Basically, why would I want to put a food in my body that has traces of glyphosate?
Yeah, that's a pretty direct question to ask yourself.
Yeah.
Especially if you're aiming for health.
It forces a reevaluation, doesn't it? If a food, even one with a good reputation, might carry this kind of contamination risk. And the source also mentions some brands had levels above safety limits.
Okay, so that's pretty concerning. We've got potential mineral issues and now glyphosate contamination. What's the third point the source makes? It's about blood sugar, right?
Yes. And how we actually eat oatmeal, which is an interesting angle.
How so?
Well, the source argues that plain oatmeal, it's kind of bland, isn't it?
Huh. Yeah, most people don't just eat it plain with water.
Exactly. So people add stuff to make it taste good.
You mean like bananas, apples, honey, maybe raisins, that kind of thing?
All those tasty additions. But the key point the source makes is that these are often high in carbohydrates themselves.
Right. And oatmeal itself is already pretty carb heavy.
Precisely. So you combine the oat carbs with the carbs from the fruit, the sweeteners, and you can end up with a breakfast that causes a pretty significant blood sugar spike.
And what's the potential downside of that, according to the source?
The source flags the insulin response. A big sugar hit means a big insulin release. Doing that day after day, it suggests, could contribute to developing insulin resistance over time.
Ah, okay. And didn't it also mention feeling hungrier later?
Yes. That sugar spike can lead to a crash, leaving you feeling hungry again maybe mid-morning, that feeling of increased hunger later on.
So not exactly the sustained energy you might be hoping for from breakfast.
Potentially not. Thinking about metabolic health, starting your day consistently with a high-carb, high-sugar load. It can have wider impacts, on energy, maybe weight, long-term metabolic function.
Now, the source isn't totally anti-oatmeal, is it? It does offer some workarounds or suggestions.
Yeah, it's not just criticism. It does suggest, okay, if you are going to eat oatmeal,
With that,
try pairing it with foods that bring more protein and fat to the table, like eggs, for example. The source specifically mentions the yolk being valuable here.
so balancing it out, adding protein and fat to kind of buffer the carbohydrate load.
That seems to be the idea, making it a more balanced meal nutritionally. But it also goes a step further.
How so?
It suggests maybe thinking beyond oatmeal altogether for breakfast sometimes, considering alternatives that are naturally rich in essential nutrients.
The ones our bodies can't make themselves.
Exactly. The source points towards things like fish, meat, eggs, animal fats.
And the rationale is what? That these foods might be better choices.
The claim in the source is that these alternatives can lead to greater satiety, feeling fuller for longer, and more stable energy levels compared to a primarily cereal-based breakfast.
Interesting. Keeps you going longer, maybe avoids that mid-morning slump.
That's the suggestion. And there was another quick point in the source about oat fiber.
Oh, yeah. What about it?
Just to mention that perhaps the fiber in oats isn't as easily digested or utilized by the body compared to the nutrients you'd get from, say, animal sources. Again, focusing on that idea of efficient nourishment.
Okay, so pulling all these threads together, phytic acid, glyphosate, blood sugar spikes. What's the main takeaway from this source material? The big picture conclusion.
I think the core argument is that oatmeal, despite its glowing reputation, might not be the unalloyed health champion many assume it is. It's not saying never eat it, but
urging a more critical look, a more informed choice based on these potential issues.
exactly. Encouraging people to look at the details, not just the popular image. And the source does acknowledge, that nutrition science changes.
Right. It's not static. Our understanding evolves.
It's a dynamic field. What we thought was gospel yesterday might be questioned today as we learn more.
Okay, so let's quickly recap the key arguments from the source we looked at. 1, phytic acid possibly messing with mineral absorption.
2, the surprisingly common glyphosate contamination issue in many brands.
And 3, the way we often eat it, adding lots of carbs, potentially leading to blood sugar issues and insulin concerns.
And it's worth repeating, right? This deep dive focused on the perspective presented in this specific material our listener sent. There are definitely other studies and viewpoints out there on oatmeal.
Absolutely. This is one piece of the puzzle. So for you listening, we hope this gives you some food for thought, maybe prompts a bit more research on your end, helps you make choices that feel informed and right for you.
Because like the source said, nutrition changes every day. Sometimes we have to change with it.
Which leads to a final thought, maybe. Given how much our understanding of food is changing, what other foods that we generally label as healthy might actually warrant a closer look?
Or perhaps if the goal really is efficient, effective nourishment, are there less conventional breakfast choices out there that might actually offer more than we realize? Something to chew on.